Yes, welcome to the No State Project live from the fortified compound in Mesa, Arizona for episode 44 of this Wednesday edition of the No State Project on my YouTube channel. But my YouTube channel, which is, of course, No State Project. And you can also get that on marstevens.net, which is the website, of course. And if you notice, the website today got the video for the last episode, for the last live broadcast, the LRN broadcast, and 3 success stories that we have in it. And I did put in the video, I embedded in the video the actual documentation to show 2 of the success stories that we had that were reported. Ryan in Texas and, of course, Brady in California. So definitely check that out. Another surprise in that video, which I don't usually get, but I was able to get a picture of Ernest Sarason. So if you remember from the last broadcast, that was the judge in Eric's case, that the prosecutor that we know of, one of them was Tiffany Castillo. Now, the prosecution has lied that they have evidence of jurisdiction. Well, what I was talking about with Ernest, I actually got a picture of this guy. We had a picture of a couple of pictures of Tiffany Castillo. And so the reason why I accuse him of being corrupt and being a liar is that he doubled down on a lie from the prosecution. So every step of the way, and this was reported by Eric himself last week, that he has been challenging the prosecutor's burden of proof, which is what we recommend that everyone does. Always challenge the prosecution's claims. They have the burden of proof because, hey, the accuser, whoever makes the accusation, bears the burden of proof. So that's why we focus on them, of course. So here, the foundation, of course, as you know, longtime listeners to the show know, the foundation of the prosecution's case is always the same thing. You're physically in Massachusetts there, tough guy. Our special laws, our special magical rules, they apply to you and give us the right to do whatever the hell we want over here. So, why am I doing that and it's Massachusetts? So, Eric filed the motion to dismiss and was willing to plead guilty if, in fact, the prosecution had met their burden to that point. And they lied. They lied, which is what they do. So if you're going to be dealing with these people, you know, you need to assume that every single word out of their mouth is a lie. It's a half-truth at best. Because that's what they do. They're crooks. Of course they're not going to play it straight with you. So they lied saying that the evidence proving the code, the sacred writ, was in the police report. Now, I gotta tell you, being that specific with somebody engaging you with the Socratic method doesn't always work out too well if you don't know what you're talking about. But here Eric did. And so, of course, to bring you up to speed, when he asked them, what are you talking about? Where? Cite it. They said, go get your own lawyer to explain it to you. Like, but you have to tell us what the hell you're talking about. So they lied. It's not in there. So instead of Mr. Sarason doing what should have been done if there was any pretense of fairness whatsoever in these proceedings, and there's not, he would have just said, and with all due respect, all right, so there are a lot of times where the judge does say to the prosecution, where is your evidence? Here, all the judge did was lie. He doubled down on it and said it was in the police report. Well, that's a written instrument. They should just cite it. What page is it on? Could you narrow it down for me? Give me the page number, the paragraph. Why don't you at least be specific of what you're talking about? They can't, because it's not in there. They lie through their teeth. And so I actually got a picture of... It's the only one I could find online. I was very lucky, I think, to find this picture, and it'll be in this video. There he is. And you know, you would think that some people would mellow out more as they get older. He's not a young man. I mean, he's easily 70 years old. Hasn't mellowed out at all. Just as much of a crook now as he probably was when he first put that stupid black robe on. What is that? Putting that black robe on, does that contribute to him being a crook? I don't know. I honestly don't care. But it'd be interesting to know. So definitely check that new video out. We'll also have, I'll probably put Mr. Sarason's name in the title to this video also. So when anyone does a Google search or any internet search for Ernest Sarason, they're going to come up with the video and they're going to know what he did. And you know why, when you hear these things, then it really makes sense why they have to give themselves titles. Honorable. Yeah, honorable. Does that really... Oh, if by honorable mean not hold the prosecution to their burden of proof, well then yeah, that I'll accept that definition of honorable as applied to them. Yeah, these people over here. So I do want to point out I have not heard back from Lauren, and because he was going to court today. No, he's going to court on Monday. Haven't heard back, but Bo was nice enough to let me know that he's okay. So I went to their Skype, and he said, "Hey, Mark, I made it out safely," with the big thumbs up there. So I'm glad to hear that. Maybe we will get a report from Bo in Texas regarding that. So, and I also want to say hi to my Goomba there. It's been a while. But my buddy Keith, the crapolator, up there in the, let's say, Toronto area. So it's glad to see you with us. One of these days, we're going to have him on the show again. It's been a long time for that. But speaking of being on the big show, we've got somebody local, I think. We've got area code 480. You're live on the No State Project. What's your name and what part of the Valley of the Sun are you calling from?
I'm in preparation for my trial and knowing how they are using anything that I've put out there sort of against me, and I can go in more detail. I kind of want to keep the city private for now if we can.
Sure.
I'm probably going a little overboard, but I've seen them in action, and I don't suppose they ever listen in on that. On the show, do they?
You know, we've had U.S. attorneys that we knew for a fact because they admitted to listening to the show and monitoring the Skype chat. So yeah, we know. So, and I'm pretty certain on Saturday's show when Lauren called in that we had some extra ears listening. Which, hey, they're more than welcome if they want to hear that how immoral it is to force people to, strangers to give you money and that they're a criminal organization. I'm happy to have them listening. I'd prefer if they actually called into the show, but I don't.
Well, at any rate, yeah, Mark, that's why I don't want to say every detail that I'm holding close to the vest to use in court, because do you want me to go into kind of the brief overview that would probably take about 60 seconds to get through?
Yeah, what name do you want to use for the show?
I'm Lisa Liberty, or Liberty Lisa. Okay. And at any rate, I was arrested and put in jail overnight for a crime that I did not commit. I was approached by a police officer who demanded my purse. And I immediately gave my purse over. Upon his return, I was told that I was under arrest. There really wasn't a question-answer period. It didn't appear to me that there was any investigation that really occurred. I wanted to get home. So I was walking alone on the street. This is midnight. Had several drinks, and that's not against the law. But I had been in a cab that dropped off some other passengers, and they squared up. I didn't provide an address. I didn't request a service. I began discussing a flat fare, and I think that's where the potential mix-up occurred. So at any rate, I did have I want to be careful how I phrase this, but I had a disagreement with the cab driver in that we could not agree on a flat fare for him to take me 20 miles north. If you get in a cab here where I live, it's anywhere from $80 to $120, and I was willing to pay double an Uber, but he didn't want to come to an agreement, at which time I told him, well, I can take an Uber for a third of the price, and it's really far. He could have my business, or he wasn't going to win it if he wasn't going to cut me a rate. Well, he either didn't, I gathered, and after reading the report, I also gathered that he didn't speak English very well. English wasn't his first language, and he locked me in the cab. And at that point, when you're locked in somebody's cab and they're not talking to you, they're not negotiating a fare, they're just quiet, and you're locked in, and you're a female alone, everything goes through your mind at what this cab driver might do to you. So I began banging on the car door, saying, you have to let me out, I will call the police, and screaming for help. In my mind, seriously, my life could have been in some trouble there. And so I don't know if I was able to unlock the door, if the cab driver unlocked the door, but I fled a cab as quickly as I could. And apparently there were police in the vicinity, and they automatically took, for some reason, the side of the cab driver. And again, no request for my ID. He asked for my purse. And if you have a large officer coming at you with, they look very agitated. His disposition was, I'd call it hostile, and he didn't question. He said, give me your purse. So, of course, I did. And I thought, certainly, they think I'm a drug dealer or something. And certainly, he'll go through my purse and clear me, and I'll be on my way. I'll receive an apology and be good to go. But he went back to the patrol car, and I don't know what he did there with my purse as I waited. But, again, upon return, as he's approaching me, he's telling me I'm under arrest. So I was shocked because the cab driver had never demanded money from me. Again, we were just in a dispute if I would even have him take me all the way home 20 miles. So if you go out like I do, to negotiate with these cab drivers in advance or use Uber. But at any rate, so without any investigation, without an understanding of where I was going to, he had my license. He knew my home was 20 miles north. He had my purse. He knew I had $50 cash. He knew I had $30. He actually also, after reviewing the report, had the address that the cab driver actually dropped people off at. He could have easily knocked on that door and said, do any of you gentlemen here owe a cab fare, and squared it up that way. Instead, for some reason, and for the life of me, I can't figure out why this officer decided that they were going to shake me down for a $15 cab fare that I didn't owe, and put me in jail. I had two dogs. A little side story. Am I going on too long? I don't want to derail everything on your show. Can you hear me, Mark?
Yeah, I can hear you. It's not like we have commercials on here, but
okay.
So to break up the conversation, I do want to get some context, enough context about what happened, so that we can move towards working with you, to a resolution. So it may be bad that you were there in jail and you had family or pets at home, but let's stick to more of the context of what they did wrong to you, and so let's get to a resolution.
Yeah, well, and that's kind of where I don't know at what point I was under investigation. I tell you, when an officer comes at you in the way that he came at me and demands your belongings, you remember it. It doesn't matter if you had 100 cocktails. It does. You remember those things. You remember getting locked in a cab driver. I was in a neighborhood I did not know. I couldn't identify that house if I tried to. In fact, I've gone back and through those neighborhoods and trying to figure out the What was this address that somebody requested? I handed my belongings over. The report is interesting. He goes back and forth as to whether he could locate my ID. Another thing that I was charged for is for not it's called false reporting. If you've seen that before, it means that they requested your identity and you didn't cooperate, or you provided false information. And I also learned today, because I did the records request in our community. They use body cam, and I thought, this is great. He's lying all over this police report. He said that he gave me a chance to settle up with this cab driver. Mark, anybody in their right mind, once you're arrested or told you're going to be arrested, and they say, just give us $15 and you can go home, you're going to comply with that, even if you don't owe the money. In his report, he said that I was combative and that I was offered the chance to pay and that I declined it, and that I said, take me to jail. This is a lie. I never said these things. And I thought, well, there's body cam.
Right.
Doesn't this guy know that this is all going to be on body cam? Well, I called the records department again today, and I am learning as I go. I'm now recording every phone call that I make into them, because I already found that backfires if you tell them any inkling of what your case is. So at any rate, just for your information or anybody else's, these officers that have body cam, it's not there to aid the community at large. Oh. It's there to aid the officers in setting up a story against you.
Well, sure. And any time that there's something damaging on there, it will have malfunctioned. It's very, very common.
Right.
We had that happen with somebody on the other side of the valley a year or so ago, where all the body cams, there was a malfunction. And that's just the way it goes. It's the thing that happened with Nurse Wubbles up in Salt Lake City, I think is very rare, where you see that they actually give up and not have some flimsy excuse. Oops. Oh, we're sorry, we didn't turn it on, or some other equally stupid thing. Or I just heard recently that NASA, supposedly these are supposed to be real people at NASA, claiming that all the original telecommunications with the moon landing is gone. That none of the recordings they're all been destroyed because they were overwritten because they were trying to save money. Huh. What, a government agency trying to save money? So here it's not a surprise. I mean, I'm figuring that the whole time you're telling me that there's body cam footage, look, you're going to do a discovery request and you're not going to get it.
Yeah. Right. Well, here's something else that everybody ought to know. There's two things here. The officers, they turn the body, and this is per the records department. And again, she wanted to be careful in overstating what her knowledge was, but per the records department today, the officer controls when that device is on or off. So they can shut it off, say what they want, harass anybody as they please, and then turn it back on and make you look like the bad guy. So it is at their fingertips whether that camera is rolling or not. Second, the officer has access to that footage after the case. So if they want to review it again and again and figure out a way to paint you as guilty, they've got that footage in front of them to do that. So while I thought this body cam was a great tool for the community, it is just set, again, to aid a corrupt, and I'm amazed at the amount of corruption that I endured. I haven't, again, this is per talking to, did I say the name of the city by accident? This is talking to police records today. And I asked her those questions, whether the officer could review this and whether it was at his discretion, whether the camera was on or off. And her answer, and again, she stated, I'm not 100% sure, but to my knowledge, the officer controls when that camera is on or off, and the officer can review it after. I don't think they can tamper with it, but they can, as they're writing the police report, which for some, Yeah.
Yeah, they're not supposed to,
So,
and there's supposed to be a chain of custody.
Oh, really?
They're supposed to know and sign that every person who has that piece of evidence has to sign that they've reviewed it. So if there is a problem, they can go through and they can see where the chain was broken. This is a huge Brady violation if they don't give that to you. The chain of custody is extremely important, especially with real crimes like with rape and murder, where if you're talking about DNA evidence and things like that, and they don't preserve a chain of custody, so that there is a problem, you can determine where it happened. Yeah, that's bad. But hey, they had one agent up in the Northeast that was found to have been faking thousands of forensic results, and thousands. So I
remember.
Oh, and that's just one particular case. So. It's, to me, at least, I'm not trying to minimize what happened to you, but considering what we have heard before and what does normally happen,
sure.
Yes, this is bad, but it shouldn't really be a surprise to anybody who's ever had any experience dealing with the police. These people are, they're bullies. From beginning to end, they are bullies. I saw a video today of a cop putting somebody into a coma. And so what he did was, not only did he tase him, but after his hands were tied, cuffed behind his back, he picked him up by his hands and then dropped him on the street on his face. Why? Oh, because apparently they said the guy had a mouth on him. So now just mouthing off to a cop is now just, and it's been long a justification. Contempt of cop is nothing new. So did they tell you, yes or no, that there was body cam footage? Do you know for sure if it exists?
There is body cam. It will take 4 to 8 more weeks to get it, and they can't say what's on. They don't know what's on there. So, I confirmed.
Sure.
I prepaid for whatever footage I have access to. But again, there's flat out pulling out of thin air, fabricating things that were said, things that were to disparage my character, to make me look like a degenerate. And even to the extent where, if I was as a degenerate, as you said, can I plead that I was, mentally incapacitated, and therefore, I mean,
well,
I wouldn't do that, and I don't think I need to. But there's.
The thing is, you would have to be able to prove it, so it's still your word against his, and now you're taking a burden upon yourself. If you make an affirmative defense, you have to have evidence, or they'll file a motion in limine against you, like we do, and they'll keep you from even raising that defense. So you have to be able to prove it, and look, this, if it's not thrown out because there's a lack of evidence proving that the code applies to you in the first place, and it does have to go to trial, it may come down to, well, let's say, at least in discovery, it may come down to having a proper body cam. I mean, if it comes down to the cop lied, then obviously they should dismiss it on that. And then I
Marc,
would use...
he lied. He needlessly lied. I went and visited everybody that owned the establishments. They accused me of being in a particular establishment. And this is not incidental to the investigation, but he thought he'd throw this in there anyway, that security took me and threw me out of an establishment at approximately midnight. So I'm having a camera follow me everywhere now, but I actually visited. I called the establishment. They said, we don't even have security. So I don't think that's true. And I said, well, can you tell me if I was even there? Because I don't believe I was there, let alone thrown out. And so, again, how do I prove I wasn't there? I have to go embarrass myself in front of these establishment owners and say, can you please share your video footage with me just so I can show I wasn't there? And thankfully, they're helping me.
Wow.
And hopefully this will be admissible in court, because all I can do is show that this is false and that's false. And one important thing here, he got my date of birth correct. He said I lied about my date of birth, or that he couldn't get it out of me. But he got, the arresting officer, got my date of birth correct on the ticket they wrote me. But in the police report, he's off by several years, and it reflects that. Is that anything that I can say? He obviously got something off here and this should be thrown out altogether?
Well, unfortunately, they usually hold they hold a lot of things that the cops do as harmless errors. Now, look, your date of birth is not, especially in a charge like this, your date of birth is not significant. I mean, obviously, if it was some kind of statutory rape, date of birth is critically important, obviously. But here they would just blow it off. It doesn't go to whether she's guilty of what do they actually of false reporting, unless they're trying to claim that you gave them purposely a false date of birth.
I think that's what they're trying to come up with in the police report. They also said that I said, you can touch my ID, but nothing else. And that is, I never said that. I welcome them to go through my purse because I thought I'm as innocent can be. And I didn't know this cab driver was off.
But Lisa, since you mentioned it, I just want to jump in and say it doesn't matter how innocent somebody is. You do not offer anything to the police. Other than identifying yourself, you keep your mouth shut. You do not agree to anything. They're going to do it anyway. But you never consent, and just because you think that, and this is for everyone listening too, it doesn't matter how innocent you are. You could be... have video proof that you are absolutely innocent. It doesn't matter. They can still charge you for things that you say. And there was someone in New York, I don't remember the exact details, this guy had proof. He was in Florida at the time of the crime. He had documented proof. He had hotel receipts. They had video. The guy was not in New York. He could not have done it. They still convicted him. Not only did they charge the guy, they convicted him.
And he got convicted. That's concerning because at this point, who do you trust, or how do you ensure that you're going to get a fair trial?
You're not going to get a fair trial. If you get a trial, it will not be fair. The fact that they are holding you against your will to answer the prosecutor and forcing you to answer the prosecutor's complaint without having any evidence on the record to show that the court has jurisdiction to do so is pretty flagrant, evidence that you're not going to get a fair trial. The best that you and I can do in these situations is to make it look so bad that if the judge, which most of the time they do, which is good, unlike Pierpan, who's one of the real bad ones in Scottsdale that I have personally been in front of. But they have Pierpan. I can't remember his first name. He's a hearing officer. He wouldn't be doing an actual crime. He does mainly traffic. But he was somebody that said that Mike didn't even appear, and I was there. I know Mike was there. Mike was threatened by this animal. And yet he still lied and said he wasn't there. There was all sorts of video footage. He purposely went to to security to make sure that there was a written record that he had been there, and the conviction stood. He got a default judgment, a failure to appear against Mike, and Mike was there. He actually threatened me. I'm surprised he didn't charge me and convict me with some. But the best we could do is to make it so difficult for them to proceed and to make it so obvious that they're being unfair is that they'll do the right thing and toss it out. Maybe they'll hold the prosecutor to their burden of proof. Unlike this piece of garbage Sarason up in Massachusetts, maybe the judge here will just sit back and let the prosecutor actually do their job. And if that's the case, then it could get tossed out. But from beginning to end, none of this is really going to be fair against you. So that you have to understand. Arguing the merits... I think what you get here is, again, it's the same key we always play on the show. Does the prosecution have any evidence in the record at this point that would prove, if accepted as true, would prove that just because you're physically in Arizona, a written instrument from 1910 applies to you and creates obligations? I mean, is there anything in there to prove that?
Sure, that even if I'm in the city, if I reside in the city, if I'm sent to the appropriate court, I might still use, are you saying jurisdiction?
Well, right, because jurisdiction of the police and jurisdiction of the court, which the applicability of the code is what is what jurisdiction's based on. If you're physically in Arizona, their rules apply. There's no evidence to prove that. And I have a Supreme Court, I have Scott Bales from the Arizona Supreme Court on record on my website. When I asked him, do you have any evidence to prove that, and I was at the ASU Law School when I did this, any evidence at all to prove that just because I'm physically in Arizona, your Constitution applies to me? And he said, because they prosecute and put other people in prison every day. And then, of course, when I called him out on that obvious BS, they told me I had to stop. They wouldn't allow me to question him any further. So anyway, so even though remember, don't use the technical phrases. We're talking using lay terms. They're trying to use your physical location. And I'm just going to say Mesa. I know that may not be where you are. That's where I am. They may just say because you're physically in Mesa. If they say something like, if you're in the city of Mesa, I say, well, excuse me, just stick to lay terms. Are you talking about my physical location of Mesa? Yeah, because it's called territorial jurisdiction. So this is why we ask leading questions so that they don't get the opportunity to do things like that. So if I ask, do you have any evidence that just because I'm physically in Mesa, your Constitution applies? And they say, well, if you're within the city, of course the laws apply. I object. No, that's not an answer to the question. Yes or no. If I'm physically in Mesa, does your Constitution, a written instrument, see, it's all lay terms, does that apply? But there's no evidence to prove that. So you have the police report. You can tell me this. Is there any information in the police report that, if accepted as true, proves that just because you're in Arizona, a written instrument called the Constitution applies to you?
How often does that work? I'm just thinking.
Well, this is a tactic, and it's not something that we just ask the question and then we determine, and then whatever the result is, we report on the show. You're talking about a long. Yeah. It could take a number of months of constantly plugging away at this foundation, because not only is it the foundation of personam jurisdiction, it's the foundation of subject matter jurisdiction. Because subject matter jurisdiction is they have to have subject matter jurisdiction. They have to be able to hear that particular case, let's say like traffic. But the word case is what is operative here. That's what's more important. It's not that they have subject matter jurisdiction over all traffic complaints. They have jurisdiction over traffic cases, and under their rules, because it's an adversary proceeding, there has to be certain elements to be a valid case or controversy. And that's why you have things like corpus delicti. You have the injury and the damage. You have the act and the result. And that's a part of their system because it's adversarial. So they're accusing you of violating their code. That they're saying, and this is what's called mala prohibita, like I mentioned in the last show. Mala prohibita is wrong only because they said so, not because it's wrong by nature, like rape, murder, and robbery. Okay, so they have to be able to show a valid case of controversy, valid cause of action against you, and they are going to be alleging that you violated their code. Well, is that sufficient to show that the code applies to you in the first place? Aren't they just assuming that? Mm-hmm. Well, they are just assuming it applies to you, but there has to be proof of that. And that's why we have been successful on 4 continents. I just posted 2 more. And no, it's not just because the cop doesn't show up. But to say that the cop is not showing up just because it had nothing to do with the motion to dismiss, it had nothing to do with the Brady request, I think is really short-sighted or biased and not looking at all the evidence. So I'm not saying that challenging jurisdiction and plugging away and doing a proper effective cross-examination gets something thrown out every time. Using the Fourth Amendment to get charges thrown out is really effective. Is it effective every time? No. That doesn't mean you don't use it. It's just you have to take into account the different personalities that are issue here. You're talking about going in front of a lawyer who there's a 95% chance that the job he had before putting that stupid robe on was defending the state as a prosecutor. He was given a free pass on jurisdiction. He's not used to being challenged on that, or she, and they're not going to hold a prosecutor down the line who could be working in from the same office they came from. He's not going to hold them accountable to that. See, just...
Yeah. I explained in one of my emails that it's more than just me getting out of a ticket at this point. Well, a ticket that will ruin my career. The corruption is amazing.
Yeah, I know.
I can't, in good conscience, let this happen. What's interesting is I'm not from Arizona. I grew up in a different state, but my father, his entire life, was a judge. And ultimately, he became Chief Justice. But I can tell you,
really?
Many years ago, to get a warrant was a big deal. I mean, the officers would come to our house in the middle and say, "We need a signature for a warrant." They go knock on a judge's door and get their warrant signed. Now, I'm having an officer charge me saying, "Give me your purse." It's not like I had a choice to cooperate or not. The guy's got a gun, and he's agitated and hostile and crazy looking from my vantage point. I'm already scared. I was just locked in a cab, and I'm walking the streets of, an empty neighborhood alone, trying to find a safe place to call an Uber. But it seems to me that something really changed from how it used to be.
Well, on the street, even your dad will tell you, and if they have probable cause, they don't need a warrant. That especially on a traffic situation. If they believe they have probable cause that a crime is being committed right in front of them, then your father will. I'd love for you to see if your father would call into show or let me record some segments with him. I'm glad to hear it's as a matter of principle, because a lot of times, well, not a lot, but sometimes people come in, they see the record that I have on my website of how many things have been tossed out from traffic to taxes to drugs. But a concern they have is, well, I don't know if I'm comfortable challenging the whole foundation of the system. I want to say that this ticket and this cop is corrupt, but I'm not comfortable necessarily saying the whole system is. You're seeing a very small part of that. The system is corrupt to the core. They force strangers to give the money. It's a criminal organization, and they're going to do things to try to protect that. Are they going to necessarily yell and scream? They don't always do that. Are they going to always cover the prosecution's burden and lie for him? They don't always do that either. So your dad may have been one of the more honest ones. We occasionally encounter those. It's great to see those. We had one up in Wisconsin where the prosecutor didn't provide the evidence, didn't provide a reason why he wasn't supposed to provide evidence, and so the judge granted the motion to dismiss. I mean, it does, so you don't know if that's going to happen. You don't know how much the prosecution is going to dig their heels in. This is a $15 controversy here. That's really what started it. If you just launch an aggressive defense, that might be enough for the prosecutor to just say, I don't want, look, what do we, why don't we just knock this down to so-and-so? And you may want to live with that. I don't know. But you certainly can challenge them effectively by taking their claim and just asking for the evidence they're basing it on. That police officer has determined probable cause. He's making a legal determination that you're here physically in Arizona, the Constitution applies, I have jurisdiction to investigate. That's a legal determination. I can pretty much guarantee you ask him questions regarding that statement of probable cause, and you do it right, the prosecutor will impeach him for you. Now, I don't have the time because we got a full line of calls now. But what I would do, and I know you've emailed me, I would look into doing the motion to dismiss with the Brady request, the discovery request, and start holding this prosecutor's feet to the fire as much as you can, and let them know because you're doing that you are going to fight and object every step of the way, that you will make them fight, you will make them work as hard as they've ever worked before for a $15 prosecution.
Can I ask you one quick question? What is motivating this officer? I mean, I think he knows I'm likely innocent. I think he probably knows the full story, that other people requested an address and the cab guy didn't stop the meter. Why is he so motivated to ruin my life for $15?
It's a power trip. Cops get off on abusing other people. They get off on it. They live for that. I've had cops on the show. I know all about these adrenaline junkies. This guy's not nearly as bad as one of these drug warriors. Those guys are sick. Those guys have serious mental problems. But they are like any other garden variety bully. The only difference is he's got immunity. He's got a gun. He has been given a presumption of correctness. And they get off on it.
So can we inquire about their hiring practices? I mean, they've got bona fide sociopaths on the police force.
Sure. And just like the United States military after World War II, said, we got a serious problem here. Most people aren't shooting and trying to kill the other side there. So we've got to grade on a... Yeah, and it's already matter of public record that police departments will not hire people past a certain IQ. And they try to say, because the public relations is, well, really smart people will get bored with the job. And no, really smart people ask questions. And that is the problem. So they purposely hire people who are bullies, who are prone to that, and don't ask questions. They've got just enough of an education and just enough of an intellect to do what they are told, and that's it.
Yeah.
So when occasionally one breaks through the ranks, they usually are whistleblowers, and they're few and far between. Get with me off air. We can do more and help work you through the process. I would definitely suggest getting into the No State Project Skype chat and start doing some role playing so that you can get better at the Socratic method and asking just leading questions and bringing out the contradictions in their statements. So when they say things such as, 100. Well, if you're here, the laws apply, you know how to respond effectively and show that that's BS.
Okay. Yeah, I will do. See you guys on Skype.
All right. Appreciate the call. We've got Lisa in Phoenix, and we'll go. Wow, we're running out of time. Boy, when you don't do commercials, it goes even faster. Area code 925. You're live on the No State Project. What's your name? Where you calling from?
Todd from Livermore, right outside of San Francisco.
All right, San Francisco. All right. What do you have for us today?
I have called in before, Marc. Let me just state I appreciate your show. I appreciate the information you're putting out. I think it's educating a lot of us of what we internally already knew. To get to the point, so I got a traffic infraction in San Francisco a couple of weeks back. So I'm going to contest the ticket. So I had purchased your scripts probably about 6-7 months ago, and so now they're going to come to fruition. So I've been paying attention, listening to the shows, listening to other people talk as the shows progress. I'm just not sure, and it's probably basic 101 that you're informing us, but exactly when I'm supposed to get the information into the judge and the prosecutor. And let me say, I actually took the time Monday, went to the court, went to the traffic court, sat in and observed. There were only 2 folks in there at the time. Very small court. So I know where I'm going and I see the layout and I kind of see how it went down with those 2 cases. So I have to go in to the traffic court to contest the ticket, set up a date for an arraignment. And then is that when I start to send the information to the prosecutor? And from what I see, it looks like there won't be a prosecutor. It will just be the cop.
Well, you want to send in California, we do the demur, the motion for judicial notice, and the discovery request. We do that as soon as possible and send it to, since you know that there's no prosecutor, you send it to the police officer at the police station, which you can get the address online. So that's another real quick. That's another thing that I mentioned. Like when people try to say it had nothing to do with the motion to dismiss and the Brady request, if the cop doesn't show up, what is motivating the cop not to show up? So that's why the but for. Would he have? It's an unknown. Would he have shown up had we not made a defense? We don't know. So we have. I think that the fact is we have to go by the data. We filed a very effective motion to dismiss that is holding him to his burden of proof. And yes, he probably figured not worth my time and didn't show up because it's not worth his time to try and provide what he doesn't have. So it's easier just to not go than to try to spin some BS and hope that the judge is going to double down for you.
So I get it, but so I need to make the appointment for the arraignment, and then when I get the date, this is how I'm seeing it. When I get the date, I'm gonna go in this week, make the appointment. I'm sure it'll be set out for a month or so, and then right there, say I go in Friday, and then when I get my date, then that's when I want to start mailing this out. Correct?
I would mail it. I don't know why you're trying to make an arraignment, an appointment for an arraignment. They should set that automatically. That's not something that you need to do. I would send it, if I was going to set a date for anything, it would be on the demur. I'd get a hearing on the demur.
I'm reading right now off the San Francisco Superior Court, their information. It says, how do I contest a ticket? There are two ways to challenge a ticket: schedule a trial date, or ask to contest the ticket by written declaration. And then below it says there are two ways to request a trial when you can. I don't want a trial, but it says to request a trial when you can present your case to a judge. A, you can schedule an arraignment without depositing the bail, or B, you can avoid the arraignment by depositing the full amount and asking for a trial date without an arraignment. To schedule a trial date at arraignment, you must first come to the court with your identification to schedule the arraignment, and then you must return to court for the arraignment hearing to set a trial date.
Okay, do me a favor real quick before we get into this some more. Send me that link so I can have it in the video so people can see what you're reading from.
Absolutely, right off their website.
Well,
and there's just a couple
the thing that they're not Todd, what they're not telling you, and I have to. Well, I'm very short on time. I can't believe the hour's almost all the way up. They're not telling you that that's not the only way that you can contest the ticket. They're not telling you can contest by a demur. And so I would not, unless you want a hearing on the demur, I would just file the demur as my response.
Okay.
There's no... See, this is a very common tactic. It's like we're talking with Lisa. They lie. They're never going to tell you, oh, by the way, you can file the demur and contest it that way, where you're not even talking about the merits. All you're doing is saying that the ticket's not sufficient. Because 1004 of the California Code, it's very clear. So right there in the code, and I have that in the last video too, because it's a very common thing that comes up. If there isn't sufficient facts pled to set forth an offense, well, if they're just assuming that the code applies and you violated it, that's not sufficient facts to show that it applies in the first place. It's mala prohibita. It only exists by reason of the statute. Otherwise, it's not considered a crime. So it absolutely is essential that they have some facts to back that up.
Correct. Got that. All right. So it's funny. It's interesting. As I was sitting in the court, there was a big old sign, and I actually had a video camera, a small video camera I take everywhere for my interactions. And the court didn't notice it, but I was unable to turn at the time. But it said right there that you will not be allowed, or went to this type of wording, to have a trial by a jury. This will be done by the judge only. Right,
because this is probably considered an infraction. A minor infraction. So it's not. They're not looking for jail time on this. Yeah, and that's why. Yeah. And in fact, even if it was a misdemeanor, you wouldn't get a jury for most misdemeanors unless. Because they have to. Most misdemeanors, they typically don't give you a jury. It's very limited on especially traffic misdemeanors, unless it's reckless driving, or you're not going to get a jury for that. And to be honest, with the track record we have with juries that have been reported on the show, I mean, I don't know if I would try. Can I really reach even one of these people? I don't know.
No, I totally understand that. I truly do. And I know you're limited on time. If I got a couple more minutes or a couple more seconds, however it might work, I just wanted to mention a couple things. One that might upset you and turn your stomach, and I had to do it. If you recall, and I understand if you don't, I called about 6 months ago. I had got a parking ticket in my company truck in San Francisco. So instead of dealing with it because it was a company, I just paid the $10 fine and let it go.
Okay.
Hey, I'm sorry?
That's not a big deal. I mean, we're about damage control, and you're picking, the fight. So a $10 parking ticket, that, is it,
That's not it. That's not. I was just letting, that's when I got your information. So, because I couldn't challenge it and push it a lot because of my employers. Here's the thing, try to make a long story short, believe this or not. So, back on the Labor Day weekend, late at night, we had a little party. People had left late at night. It was hot here, had the windows open. We were a little loud, me and my wife. A neighbor called. We had no idea the police were at our house, and because we have a decent-sized house, and we were in the back of it. And so since we didn't respond to the door, they started kicking my door down. And so they were on the side of my house, and I saw saw a flashlight, and I did not know what was going on. So first thing I thought was someone broke in my backyard. So I started locking my house up. Then it was the police demanding to get into my house. And I said, absolutely not. If you have a warrant, show me a warrant, and then we can talk. And they weren't having any of that. So they went around the house and started ripping my doors down.
Jeez.
They caught I'm sorry?
Oh, wow. Okay. This is terrible.
It gets worse. So we had a back window open, which happened to be my son's bedroom. And so we went back there to go shut it. And my wife went to the window, and the police officer was there with his gun drawn and was telling my wife to let us in. And she was telling him, no, I'm okay. There's no reason to come in here. And then when I got to the window, I pushed my wife to the side, did not throw her or anything else because there was somebody with a gun in her face. And I was telling the police to go away. We did not call them. We do not need your assistance. Do you have a warrant? And as I went to the window to try to shut the window, the officer tased me. So he tased me from outside the window into my own bed, my own house, and proceeded to tase me for about 12 seconds. And my son, actually, a juvenile, ripped the probes, the taser, broke the current. And then he threatened to tase him. So eventually my wife lets them in the house. They come in the house. They arrest me. I'm not physical at all. I was complying with what they said, just trying to talk to them with reason. They were having none of that. Then they proceeded to they did. They arrested my son, and then they arrested my wife. So we are well familiar not to speak to the police at all. So they hated me because I didn't answer any questions of theirs. So I got arrested. I got charged with 3 misdemeanors. And
such as?
I'm sorry, Mark?
They arrested a whole family. What the hell are they? What were they there for?
No, they actually let my wife go, interviewed her for about an hour, and my son interviewed him for about an hour. We caught this on video. They had plenty of body cams. They were there because we were loud. Like I said, it was 3 o'clock in the morning. All the windows were open. We did not realize that we were, being loud. But we never heard them come to the house. And so they made the assumption, since they heard me and my wife, and we were rather loud than we should be at that time in the morning, we realized that. They assumed that I was abusing my wife, which was not the case. And that was absolutely dropped immediately. But my point is I really wanted to, because I've been listening to you for a long time, or a while, I'll say, almost 2 years, wanted to use this to defend myself and expose, and I would take the consequences of whatever would have happened, meaning jail time. But I just couldn't do it because I got 5 years before I retire, and I can't jeopardize my employment right now. So that cost me, just to let you know, my attorney called. I had to get an attorney. Attorney called today. It got down, as I told her, this is what I wanted. I explained to her, and it was a little delicate situation of my ideology and my thoughts and my beliefs on exactly what is happening. She took it in stride. She represented me very well. Cost me $7,500 for the $6,500 for the attorney, $2,500 to get out for bail. Then today, my attorney and the prosecutor whittled this down to a 415, which is basically a traffic infraction with a $500 fine. So that whole ordeal cost me close to $10,000 for people who wanted to break into my house without any real probable cause or reason. It's just atrocious.
Wow, that sucks. And the real crime here is how much you paid the attorney for something like that when you could have very well have done that yourself.
It's eating me up, but I got to move on and go forward. So I'm going to, I get this. I've known this my whole life. I'm 50 years old. I used to just attack it a different way. More just thinking, reason when people will help the situation, but I realized over the years it didn't. I know this has been wrong for a long time, and I taught my kids this. So this one ate at me, but I had to do what I had to do, bite the bullet, and move on. On a different note, my attorney, we're discussing a federal lawsuit for civil rights violations. And then, of course, I'm going to make a complaint with the police department on the conduct of this specific individual. So, yeah, I just wanted to put that out there. That it sometimes maybe I wasn't as strong as I'd like to have been at the time. I just had a couple of situations, again, with my employment where I just can't jeopardize it. If I have to go to jail for a while, my employer may understand, but then again, I'm not completely sure on that.
Right. I would throw out that I would look more at a complaint against the county. Is it a city cop that did this?
Yes.
I would go and look at the city's risk management and file the complaint with a claim against their insurance first.
She already has gave me that information of how to do it.
Good.
The forms. She'll help me do that, she said.
Good. All right. Well, hey, I'm going to try to get one more call in before the show is because we're totally out of time. But I do appreciate that, and get those documents mailed out. Get them and met to the police officer at the police station, and keep in touch. Let me know how it happens.
Will do. Hope to see you at Libertopia. Me and my son.
Oh, very cool. Yes, I will definitely be there. Hope you guys make it.
All right, Mark. Have a great day.
You too. Appreciate the call. I'm totally out of time, but I'm going to try to take a short call here. We have area code 832. You're live on the No State Project. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
My name is Steve, and I'm calling from Houston, Texas.
Steve from Houston. We just got a couple minutes.
All right. Yeah. I want to make it quick. I just want to tell you a quick story. It just wrapped up. It was about a year that it took place. But my son called me on a Sunday afternoon. He says, Dad, he's 17. He was 16 at the time. He says, Dad, I just got pulled over by the police for no license, no insurance. He's driving his girlfriend's car. He doesn't even have a license yet by himself. And I have pot in the car with him. I'm like, okay, where are you at? So he tells me, I go over there, I get to the scene, make a long story short, I asked the cop that arrested him, I said, did you look at his driver's learner's permit? Because he did have a learner's permit. He said, yes. I said, did you see the signature? He signed it without prejudice, UCC 1-308. He says, yeah, I saw that. I don't think he did. He says, yeah. I said, well, he's reserved all his rights. He's an American.
Oh,
he doesn't have,
Steve?
Yeah. Hello?
Yeah.
Hello?
Yeah, Steve.
Hello?
Yeah, it's you got to. I don't have the time to go through this stuff right now, and I am overtime on the show, and I just got to tell you, they don't. None of that stuff makes a difference whatsoever. They don't give a damn. There's no merit to it anyway.
Look, let me cut you off real quick. By the time we got to the police station, they wiped out all the tickets. All the tickets. They never gave him one ticket. They never signed anything. Okay? And then the only thing left they tried getting on us was the marijuana charge. He had 2 ounces of pot on it. Okay. So I fought that with them for about 6 months. And one day they came and showed up with about 10 cops and arrested him. Because I would never go to court. I said, look, we're Americans. We're not U.S. citizens. So anyway, I got into court and I said the same exact thing that I'm telling you right now. And I went to and bought the DBA of his name, his all caps name. I own the name. It says it right here. I own the name. So I went in there. That was the only piece of paper I showed the judge. I said, this is my property. I own it. I fired the lawyer. They gave him a lawyer. I fired her right at the stand. I said, you're fired. So she was out the picture. And I showed that one piece of paper, and it was gone. Wait, over with. I got all the documentation. I'm going to send it to you so you can see it yourself.
Okay.
Waived all the fees, everything.
Because you went in and said you own the name.
Yeah. I said, it's my property. I had it from them, it was from the tax assessor. That's where you go get your DBAs from. I said, this is my property. I said, no, first question I asked him when I finally got to court, I said, where's the injured party? And I looked at the fucking attorney.
Wait, real quick. And so even though you're not a lawyer, they allowed you to speak on behalf of somebody else?
Yes, it was my son. I had to prove that it was my property. I said, he is my property. I had an authenticated birth certificate, and I had the DBA, and he signed his license without prejudice. I said, look, he has reserved his rights.
Oh, this.
And
all right, I've got to. I'm sorry, but I did go over time, and
it's not your gig.
You're gonna have to. All right, send me the. I'll take a look at the documentation, but this I can't. I've had cops approach me aggressively with their hand on the gun for not being a lawyer, and you were able to just come in with this DBA stuff, and they're
corporations. That's all they are. I said, you're a corporation.
Yeah,
you're not my constitutional Republican form of government.
No, I'm not
right now.
I'm sorry, Steve. Wait, just no more. We've heard all this stuff before. If you've got proof, then send it on over. I'll take a look at it. And if it's right, then I'll publish it on the website and I'll do a video about it. But I'd like to see it.
That's why I pray to God that you really do look at it, because it was the easiest thing I ever did, and it worked. And the first time I did it before that, and I left the fucking court with $100 check because I had to go to jail. They took me to jail. So when it was all said and done, they kept throwing out offers. I said, no, that's no good. I don't want that.
Yeah, I'm going to have to see some proof of that. But I do appreciate the call, and I'm looking forward to seeing the proof.
All right, buddy.
Thanks. Appreciate it. Steve in Houston, well, I'm always willing to look at the data, look at the proof. I don't believe that somebody can just walk into court without being a lawyer, claim that the name that they're using is my property, and they're going to drop a. He said, well, when there's just too much to unpack with that, and I've done it so many times before. But I do appreciate the calls today. That was a really fast show. I probably will not be live on Saturday, but I should be getting a pre-record, at least for part of the show. So check that out. So maybe maybe if I get the opportunity to do the show live, I'll play the pre-record also. Anyway, this has been episode 44 of the No State Project, live from the fortified compound in Mesa, Arizona, where we don't have commercials, which is nice, but it's still, holy crap, that was a very, very fast hour. Check out the last video. We got a picture, and I also have a picture of what's his name? His name is Ernest Sarason, and he was the one that doubled down on the lies that the evidence proving the Constitution applied was in the police report. So you can definitely check that out. Again, this is episode 44 of the No State Project, so appreciate everyone tuning in. So till next time, salud.